So, am I inconsistent? Let's go to the hospital. This is an attempted reductio ad absurdum, which means that what it's trying to do is say, well, you see, you're not consistent and you don't really believe in the equality of moral status, because if you did, then you wouldn't save the baby, you'd save the IVFs. Now, actually, this came up in a previous debate, and I did actually think, perhaps I would save the IVF. Actually, I've changed my mind. I would save the baby, or I would save the elderly people, the children, or the pregnant women. No, I wouldn't save the petri dish. I would save let's say it's a baby and a petri dish, right, of five IVF embryos. I would save the baby. Does this mean that I'm inconsistent? Actually, no, it doesn't, because the question equivocates on two forms of value. One, on the other hand, is social value. The other is intrinsic value, the kind of intrinsic value that I was talking about when I described dignity. For example, I might say, in the situation, let's take away the emotional stuff. So let's say that, it's not my child, or, I like babies, I think they're cute, and therefore that's my inducement for doing so. Let's say I'm stripping it down to its ethical principles here. Let's go really rational. Why would I save the baby rather than the 5 IVF embryos? Well, I think I would do that because the baby has greater social value than the 5 IVF embryos, by which I mean the baby already has relationships with her parents. She would feel the pain of the destruction of her body in a way that the 5 IVF embryos wouldn't. And that would cause me a justification for saying, I'll save the baby rather than 5 IVF embryos. Does that mean I don't believe in the equal moral status of the 5 IVF embryos and the baby? No, it doesn't. Let me give you an example to show why. Let's say that 10 Downing Street's burning down, heaven forfend. And let's say that in our current government, let's say it's burning down, and on one room we have 10 members of ordinary staff. We've got security staff, we have some secretaries, whatever. Right, let's say that that's in one room. And in the other room we've got the Home Secretary, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and the Foreign Secretary. Which do you think Special Branch is going to save? I suspect it's going to be the 3 ministers. Now, is that because Special Branch believes ministers have a greater moral status and intrinsic value than these other human beings? No, of course it doesn't. We believe that they have equal value, equal status on the intrinsic, ontological, basic status, or on those basic grounds. But it's undeniable that the 3 ministers have greater social value, and that's the reason why they would save the room with the ministers rather than the other one. Now, the reason why this doesn't, again, violate the integral status of the unborn child is because this is a matter of choosing between two goods. I save one room or I save another room. I save the petri dish or I save the baby. Right? Those are two goods. What you're not saying is, I'm destroying one group of individuals in order to save the other. Now, if it were the case that in order to save the baby I had to flamethrower through a room of IVF embryos, I wouldn't do that, because that would be a different moral situation. I would be doing an evil thing, the destruction of other human beings, in order the good thing might come of it. And I fundamentally believe you can't do that, precisely because it would violate the negative rights that I mentioned earlier on of the unborn child, of the human beings. Now, I'll just end off by saying, does this violate the agency of women? No, it doesn't, because as I've said, unless you hold and have justified a radical sense of bodily autonomy and bodily self-determination, which I don't think Anne has, unless you're willing to go as extreme as all the examples I gave, then you cannot justify the idea that bodily integrity includes the idea that you get to destroy other human beings. You simply haven't given me a reason for that. And so therefore, no, I'm not violating the agency of women, not the reasonable agency of women, in the same way that my reasonable agency would be to move my hand into the air until it stopped at Luke's face. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. And I simply think that, just to end on this point, whether or not this led to a gain for society, whether or not, and we've actually got no evidence that embryonic stem cell research has had any just a good effect on society, but let's say it did, I don't think that you justify the violation of the rights because of the moral status of some human beings in order to gain a gain for society. If you did, you could justify literally anything. That's exactly how we justified the bombing of Dresden. That's exactly how we've justified, we could justify torturing terrorists in order to get information out of them. We could justify anything based on, oh, well, we'll violate these certain rights contingently right now because it might give us some kind of societal benefit. Crikey, that's a scary principle. I'm very glad we don't believe in it. I'm very glad that human rights deny it entirely.
Thank you, Peter.